All right, lifting vegan logic. What's up? You're so logical. Since we're watching your video, this might be we might watch one more after this. Probably not your video, but why don't you come on the channel for a debate, man? You're so logical. You're gonna slay the carnists. Come on and show us how logical you are, and come discuss vegan ethics and morality. All right? You're a small channel. You got a big audience here. They would love to see you come on, and you can come beat me up with your vegan logic. Come debate me, dude. Come debate. You're a small channel. It's a bigger channel. It'd be fun. Come on for a debate. We could even do. We could have a fun one. We could do it on Killstream. We'll try to get shout out to Ralph from Ralph Retort. Killstream emailed me after Jay told him gotta get Tristan on. So come on for a debate. We'll find two vegans because people really like the Jay Tristan tag team combo. It's always fun. We get me, Jay, you, and some other vegans. We can go on Killstream, or just me and you. But, dude, your arguments suck. Your arguments freaking suck.
All right, guys. So, as you can see, Primal Edge Health has challenged me to a debate. So, I have a lot to say in this video, but before I do all that, I'm just going to cut to the chase and say that I accept the debate challenge in the form of a 2v2. Tristan, if you're watching, my email is in the description below, so just email me and we can figure out times and all that. Now, aside from my acceptance of the debate, I want to dedicate most of this video to analyzing Tristan's past, debating of veganism and his style and just the arguments he uses when debating veganism. I was going to make this video include me responding to the incredibly reasonable points made by him in his most recent response to my Alpha Apex Predator Meat is Manly parody, but it turned out that the Tristan debate style analysis part of this video ended up being way too long, so I'm just gonna save that for another video. But here's a small clip as just a preview of how incredibly reasonable he was being in that video, and just so you can laugh.
And killing your prey, standing at a cash register, reaching in my wallet, grabbing my credit card, handing it to the cashier, and then purchasing my pre-packaged prey, which I took no part in when it comes to actually killing them. Like, yo, I am the literal definition of an apex alpha predator.
Okay, so if you're gonna criticize people who don't eat vegan food, right? If you're not a vegan, then you're a fake alpha. So I guess then vegans aren't allowed to buy things with credit cards. Vegans aren't allowed to purchase food from the grocery store. Vegans have to go procure all their own food.
So back to talking about Tristan's amazing debate etiquette and the tactics he uses when debating vegans. I want to touch on the kinds of arguments I've seen him make in his vegan debates, specifically how I've seen him in the past come from a perspective of Christian presuppositional apologetics, which, no offense to religious people, is based on a lot of evidence. So much evidence. And I also want to touch on how Tristan is incapable of grasping the usefulness of hypotheticals in moral philosophy and debate. Now, before I cover those two things, I want to talk about just how amazing Tristan's debate etiquette has been in past vegan debates, because, really, he's just making so many reasonable points and also having no ad homs as well in his debates. It is just pure logical reasoning on his part.
Do that either. You won't even answer any of my questions, provide any evidence for your statements. You claim that my worldview is self-contradictory. I asked you to give an example of that. You won't. You just started rambling. Isaac is
I can't wait.
Do you have anything to say, Isaac?
All right, guys. We're out of here. This has been really fun. Vegan
okay, so
stands.
You're cucking out of the debate. You lost.
No,
you're just rambling about nonsense.
I'm not cucking out of the debate. I gave you guys 2.5 hours of my time when I should have given you none of my time. These sterile
See you later,
boys,
cuck. Bye-bye.
These sterile
okay,
soy boys.
Yeah, cuck away.
Have
Cuck
no
away
way
since
to
you can't come up with an
refute it.
argument. Okay.
You can't refute
That's great.
the argument.
You can't come up with an argument, so you're just gonna say a bunch of bull crap and
It's
then
been
cuck
so
away.
fun. I'm glad I was able to stick it out a little bit longer.
It has been fun indeed.
Jay was pretty intelligent to leave this little fact session a little bit earlier. So, but this has been just fantastic.
Okay,
your voice. My wife actually has a more masculine voice than you when she speaks with authority.
All right, so jokes aside, Tristan, if you're listening, I genuinely hope that you can remain mature in this debate and not resort to ad hominem attacks. Anybody who knows me in person and how I debate knows that when I debate, I like to actually talk about the arguments being put forward rather than just call people names when I'm pushed into a corner. I know, Tristan, it's kind of weird, but this is the thing that people do when they're intellectually honest. When they're pushed into a corner, they actually start to respond to the arguments. So yeah, that's kind of like a stipulation. You have to actually respond to the arguments instead of make ad homs. So if you're cool with that, then, we're good to go. The moment that you start dodging, acting insanely immature, and throwing ad homs, I'm just going to tap into my sarcastic parody side and just start trolling back. So just a warning, Tristan, let's please just try to keep this debate civil. And Tristan, if you plan to use your Christian presuppositional apologetics argument, where you try to say that myself as an agnostic cannot ground my worldview in something, but you can with God, please just don't.
Where do we derive this moral agency? And in your worldview, how do we know what is morally right and wrong? So something that vegans can never answer. Always ask them this. And if you are coming from a materialist, nihilistic standpoint, you can't stand up against veganism, you can't stand up against transhumanism, you can't stand up against the people trying to normalize pedophilia, you can't stand up against all the LGBTQIA+. If you're coming from a place of secular humanism and of nihilism and of materialism, you can't refute any of these worldviews. But these people ground their metaphysical claims in nothing. And they're not able to back it up. So you always got to ask them about this.
If you guys don't know what Christian presuppositional apologetics is, it is just a school of Christian apologetics that believes the Christian faith is the only basis for rational thought. It presupposes that the Bible is divine revelation and attempts to expose flaws in other worldviews. And in the case of Tristan, he likes to use this school of thought to expose flaws in worldviews of vegans, and the tactic goes as follows. Tristan will try to point out that a non-Christian presuppositionalist, who could be agnostic, atheist, or whatever, is making fundamental presuppositions, which, in case you guys don't know the definition of a presupposition is just a thing assumed beforehand at the beginning of a line of argument or course of action. So anyway, Tristan points out that the agnostic is making presuppositions which they cannot actually justify without making a fundamental assumption. So here's an easy way to think about this. If you were to ask an agnostic, or even yourself, the question, why should we be logical? You'll find that it is very difficult to answer this question without using logic. And to use logic in answering the question, why should we be logical, you are deploying the very thing you're trying to prove while trying to prove it, which is an example of circular reasoning. And circular reasoning is just defined as a logical fallacy in which the reasoner begins with what they are trying to end with while trying to make an argument. It's like saying, I think it's good to give to charity because it's good. So in this case, it's like saying we should be logical because being logical is logical. So the end point when it comes to our worldviews is that we have to start with a fundamental assumption, which we can't absolutely ground. We have to assume things which are metaphysical, such as logic. You can always ask questions like, how do you know that logic exists? How do you know that your senses should be trusted? How do you know you're not in the matrix? And how do you know that causation is a uniform thing? Now, what I mean by how do we know that causation is a uniform thing, I just mean that how do we know that cause and effect is never changing and is always the same? Like, how do I know if this time when we shoot a rocket launcher at somebody's face, that they will actually die? Like, what if somehow, when we shot that person in the face with a rocket launcher, they actually teleported to China? Because if you think about it, the reason we say that a rocket launcher to the face is going to kill you is because of probability, and how every time in the past that we've shot somebody in the face with a rocket launcher, they've died. Also, sorry for the weird example, I just thought it was funny. But anyway, yeah, the point is that we always have to make fundamental assumptions when it comes to our worldviews. There's no way of confirming with 100% certainty that all of what we perceive isn't an illusion, or the next time somebody gets shot in the face with a rocket launcher, that they won't die and will instead teleport to China. So with all of these assumptions that we make, like causation is uniform, or that we should accept logic, or that we aren't in the matrix, the person, or Tristan in this case, making the Christian presuppositional apologetics argument, will look at the non-Christian presuppositionalist who is making these assumptions and say, because you can't ground any of these presuppositions absolutely, then you can't make any absolute claims about reality, making your entire worldview fall apart because it stands on no grounds. And in making the specific claim toward the non-vegan presuppositionalist, Tristan is implying that he can make absolute claims about reality with his use of God as the thing that grounds all of his presuppositions. If you try to push Tristan and ask, how do you ground all of these presuppositions? All he's basically going to say is, well, God grounds logic for me. God told me that my senses are valid. God told me that causation is uniform. Now, when you think about it, all Tristan is doing is just putting a word, in this case the word God, as the thing which justifies all of his presuppositions. Somebody who is a Muslim and believes in, let's say, Allah, right, can say the same thing about Allah, grounding all their presuppositions. I can say the same thing about, my left shoe, there is just as much evidence for me to ground my presuppositions in the Christian God as there is for me to ground my presuppositions in Allah or my left shoe. It's all equally as baseless when it comes to evidence. And when you ask Tristan or the Christian presupper to provide evidence for the existence of God, they either dodge the question or say something like God is immaterial, so his very being is incapable of being proven, or God revealed himself to me in my experience. I can say that the infinite wisdom of my left shoe is immaterial and something that cannot be explained through scientific means, and that my left shoe revealed its infinite wisdom to me, which grounds all claims about the material world. And of course, I could also say this about Allah or any past documented God, which we cannot actually prove materially or physically. Also, we could even imagine that Tristan has provided evidence that God exists and the argument still falls apart. There's still the question of, how do you know God isn't in the Matrix? How do you know God isn't just a brain in a vat? How does God know that he isn't just a brain in a vat? How does God know that he isn't under the illusion that he grounds all things? These kinds of, oh, well, how do you know questions toward the presuppositions that we make, including the presuppositions that Christian presuppositional apologetics make, which claim that God is the grounder for all of their presuppositions, can just continue forever. Tristan and Christian apologetics are no different from moral subjectivists such as myself, in that we are all making base assumptions to justify our worldviews. It's funny because when I was doing outreach at UCF once, a Christian presuppositionalist was running this exact argument on me about my beliefs for veganism and was saying that I have no grounding for my worldview and moral system. And I said to him, it's funny how you think you're coming at me from an objective morality kind of perspective with 100% objectively grounded morals from the Christian God, because when you think about it, people do the same thing about Allah and other gods. It's almost as if it's just subjective what you each call your objective basis by which your morals and worldview operate. And luckily, the guy was actually honest, and after I said this, decided to rethink his point, which was that he grounds his morals objectively while I ground my morals subjectively.
So guys, just to summarize the debunk of the Christian presup argument, the Christian presupper and the agnostic are both the same in that they are both assuming that logic exists, except the Christian presup justifies this assumption in logic existing by also assuming that God exists and is the grounder for their belief in logic. And even if they had proof of God existing, they are still also assuming that God isn't just a brain in a vat or is living under an illusion, or that his word is absolutely right to begin with. So one final time, the point is that both the agnostic and the presup Christian, at the base of all of their beliefs, have to make assumptions either way. So this argument from Tristan and presuppers does not actually show that an agnostic vegan is making any less unsubstantiated assumptions to back their worldview as Christian or the Christian presupper is.
So guys, I'm basically 90% sure that this is going to be the argument that Tristan plans on using in this debate on veganism. And if he does, I mean, you guys know my response and how silly it actually is to operate from this perspective. Before I end this video, I want to go over Tristan's inability to understand the usefulness of hypotheticals, because I have seen him reject them in his debates on veganism in the past, or at the very least, just not like them.
This is a creation. So everything that we can experience that is invisible and visible is created by God.
I get that.
Right?
You don't have to repeat
it's the
that
maker
point.
Of heaven and earth,
Okay,
and of all things visible and invisible.
I get that. You don't have to repeat that point over and over again. So God is the creator of all things, yada yada.
But no, you asked me that if God said this is good, then it would be good. No matter what, whatever God would whatever is true, it is only true because it is created. Whatever is,
Sure,
it only
okay.
is because it is.
Okay, right. So if God created something to be a certain way, then it would be that way. Like that would be the truth. So if God created the universe in a way that made child rape okay, child rape would be okay.
I mean, it's like a hypothetical. If God created a universe where I was right in this argument and you were wrong, or if God created a universe where pink unicorns were this and that, these are hypotheticals. In my worldview, it's pointless. It's like I'm not concerned with these false hypotheticals. To me, it's just pointless.
Okay.
So one of my go-to arguments against people who say killing animals is moral because God says so includes the following line of questioning. I ask, so just to confirm, you're saying that it is moral to kill animals for food because God says so? They end up saying yes, so what I gather from their answer is that if God says something is moral, it is moral. So I, kind of like what Vegan Gains did in his debate with Tristan, will just make a hypothetical where God says something horrible like killing children is moral, and say, so if God said that, you would just consider it moral? And people like Tristan will just reject the hypothetical saying, this isn't reality, or like, this hypothetical isn't realistic and God didn't say that, so... Somebody who rejects the use of hypotheticals in a moral philosophy debate on the basis of, oh, that's just a hypothetical, or that isn't reality, so I don't have to answer your question, really just needs to take a philosophy 101 course. Hypotheticals, whether they are realistic or not, test the logical structure of a person's moral system. Imagine this for a second. Imagine if a person said to me that the reason it is justified to kill cows for food is because they have cow tails. Now, I can just create a hypothetical and say, okay, so if humans had cow tails, would it be justified to just murder them for food in the same way that we do with cows? It doesn't matter if the hypothetical is realistic or if humans in reality don't have cow tails. And using this hypothetical, I am seeing if the person who says cow tails, though, accepts the logical extension of what they're saying, which in this case would be thinking that it is moral to kill and mass genocide human beings who possessed cow tails. I understand the hypothetical sounds funny and a bit outrageous, but it isn't outrageous to deploy it for the reasons I just stated. So, Tristan, if you're listening and have gotten this far in the video, if you plan on using the Christian presup argument in the debate, please at least come equipped with some sort of evidence for God. Otherwise, I'm just going to use my left shoe to ground all of my fundamental presuppositions and say that my left shoe told me that logic is valid, all causality is uniform, and that all of this is not an illusion. And if you do come equipped with evidence for the Christian God, which, I mean, you won't, but let's just say that you do, please also come with evidence that God isn't just a brain in a vat, or that God himself isn't under some sort of illusion which he is unaware of. I cannot wait to see how you end up demonstrating these completely unfalsifiable things. And if you plan on rejecting hypotheticals because you don't understand basic philosophy, then, I mean... Alright guys, that is the end of the video. Remember to stay tuned for that debate. Hopefully we can make it happen soon. And also stay tuned for my response video to Tristan's response video to my Predator parody video. He made a lot of very reasonable points in that video, so I'm gonna have a hard time responding, but I'm gonna try my best, guys. And if you guys forgot, I have that Joe Rogan bald cap, so I'm most likely going to be doing some sort of like skits, you know, where I'm imitating Tristan and, you know, making really reasonable and smart claims. So thanks so much for watching, guys. Please like, comment, and subscribe. If you support my content and want to support me on Patreon, the link is in my description below. Thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.